I'm very pleased to introduce to you Dr. Marcello Vitale. Dr. Marcello Vitale is Associate Professor of Ecology at Sapienza University of Rome. His primary research interests lie in the combined effects of tropospheric ozone and the environmental stress factors on plants, semi-natural and crops, and forest Mediterranean ecosystems. Experimental approaches have also been addressed to reducing of the pollutants impacts in the urban areas. Dr. Vitale's work also addresses carbon cycle assessment for forest plant communities and land use and land change assessment for implementing spatial decision support systems to manage and mitigate the effects caused by desertification in semi-arid, Arabian and African areas. So welcome please with me to the stage, Dr. Vitale.
My works involve studying climate change and human activities, natural, semi-natural, topic systems. So I'm focusing on restoration ecology of the Mediterranean ecosystems that have differently managed and have been impacted in several ways. So I was interested to evaluating the ability of urban green spaces to sustain the health and well-being of citizens in the urban context. In this presentation, I will talk about the problems derived from climate change and atmospheric pollution in the urban context, and I will show in-field research that involved citizens in a participatory process in order to collect data that have used them to evaluation of the ability of plant coverage to absorb, uptake the pollutants, in particular matter, PM10, in Rome in particular. Most of global systems, such as oceans, forests, biogeochemical cycles, are actually in crisis. And there is one thing that bond all together, that is urbanization. Urban growth is driving the transformation of environment at an unprecedented scale. And according to Intergovernmental Panel, IPCC, in 2020, the urban areas collectively contributed for 75% of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions, contributing to as a great part of global warming. Urban land areas tripled between 2015 and 2050. And the building of new sites will require a vast amount of raw materials, sands, metal, and woods. The acquisition which will transform the ecosystems worldwide. If humanity continues to build cities as usual, the more raw materials will be required, then the planet can sustainably provide. And this is just to build tomorrow's cities, not even power. The rapid growth of population in the cities, combined with improving the status conditions in the cities, is putting a strain on natural resources and at risk of environment in many countries. Population density has reached unprecedented levels, and in the world, in every part of the world, regardless of incomes levels. In 2040, then half of the world population lived in urban areas, and this value is increasing to 66% by 2050. Another problems derived from expansion of urban areas which contributes to traffic jams, traffic congestions, which in turn leads to air pollution, noise, longer commuting times, all contributing to negative impact on public health and connectivity worldwide. Moreover, urban life expansion is considered to be one of the primary and important drivers of habitat and biodiversity loss. The increasing fragmentation of the natural areas interrupts the connectivity between wildlife and ecological areas, contributing to the biodiversity loss and the functionalities of important processes governing ecosystems like increasing risk from fire, pest, and disease. Moreover, climate migrants in the global south of the world further move from rural areas to big cities and then will pass the international border. Climate change is intensifying certain human health and inequalities by increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events. We have difference between urban areas and rural areas, particularly the urban heat island effects is typical from 60s, and climate change exacerbates effects such as the heat island effects, waterproofing of the soil and prevention from water recharge. And the dynamics of climate change varies non-linear, and based on the latitude, the topography, orography, and the territorial condition of the cities. Climate change, reducing climate change impact means to adopt a series of the mitigation activities. Mitigation activities in general is defined as the reduction of carbon emission to the atmosphere. And whole solution previously proposed in this symposium are adaptation to climate change and not mitigation. Reduction of carbon dioxide may be obtained by, for example, reducing the use of private cars that can improve physical activity levels and the local air quality. And sometimes the increasing renewable energy generation can improve ambient air quality. Considering the health co-benefits of climate change mitigation consolidates the case of reducing greenhouse gas emissions for many sectors of human activities. Each of these activities are important because it pose important questions. How we can improve our health and well-being in our populations. These are very important questions, and probably the answer is yes, we take into consideration an interdisciplinary approach designed on system-based interdisciplinary approach. This requires the collaboration of several various experts, epidemiologists, toxicologists, psychology, environmental psychology, environmental scientists, mathematical modelers, IT specialists, scientists, urbanists, and so on. So, this is a very important point. This is a very important point because, for example, functional performance of urban infrastructure as provided as important ecosystem service may be reduced by climate change or atmospheric pollutant. And although several benefits arise from the presence of the infrastructure in cities, such as active and passive reduction, removal of atmospheric pollution by green coverage, or reduction of air temperature by shelving, reduction of the energy used for the functionality of buildings, reducing that in mitigating of the urban head island phenomenon. However, taking this in mind, several studies highlighted that the relationship between the structure of vegetation and air pollutants, and Novak works reported a very important studies for Los Angeles, for example, that trees removed until to 8 grams per square meter. It's a very high value of removal of pollutants. And a portion of this pollution can be suspended in air, 50%, for example, but the other studies proving that the suspension is much more limited, 4% at the canopy level. Taking this in mind, the mapping and planning of green infrastructure must take charge of the issue of mitigation of urban pollution by suggesting updated methodology based on effective analysis and tools. In this frame, urban planning play a very important role in defining suitable urban green infrastructure within the connected urban space. Every city has an appropriate connected urban space. Rome, for example, is an ancient city, and its conformation, structural conformation, is very different during the several times from its origin to now. And we have a different texture, urban texture, a different location of urban garden, or parks, or historical villas, for example. So the connected urban space is represented also by open public space. The public space is defined as a working and living space where residents live and work without the canals, but open spaces are related, interconnected green infrastructure, mitigating also the urban climate, reducing air pollution. So another concept, very important concept, is the neighborhood dimension. The neighborhood size is very important to make better planning of the green infrastructure, and not only green infrastructure. This represents a basic unit of an ensemble of public and open space interconnected by avenues and paths, and in a unitary assembly, which constitutes the system of places that have values for residents. Each resident recognizes the proper space where living and working. The neighborhood concept is related to environmental area and neighborhood. These two terms seem similar, but they differ in terms of urban structure, shape, density, morphology, building topologies, and the presence or not of service and functionalities. These terms are linked each to other by the environmental area strategy that is a useful planning tools that enable the definition of urban area responding to requirements such as homogeneity in terms of urban form, morphology, building typology, density, and so on. It also promotes a better citizen knowledge of territory and awareness of the territory. Improves urban livability and pedestrian and cyclist accessibility, and access effectiveness to the green network in mitigating the urban pollution. The green network is very important to adopt a series of reduction of air pollution because, for example, to estimate the particle matter removal through, for example, street trees. And street trees is very important because they have several functions for traffic, for infrastructure, green infrastructure, and so on. And integrate several approach from dimensional analysis, ecology, and urban planning. environmental area strategies is therefore used here to define a representative test area where the green network and the overall citizens' movements are considered essential elements of the environmental area. To get these linkages, necessary to consider the neighborhood as a significant and perceptible minimum area. This presentation aims to focus the relevant role of the environmental studies carried out at the neighborhood scale. For example, the ability to capture, absorb atmospheric environments, atmospheric pollutants from air by a series of structural parameters collected by citizens, or consider neighborhood scale to characterize the targeted activities among the urban mobility, land use, and urban planning. So, the green network in Rome is approximately extending 82,000 hectares of safeguarded and protected land, which constitute around 64% of the whole municipality areas, and is constituted by natural parks, agricultural areas, natural reserves, and so on. So, in this frame, we choose a moderated neighborhood, green here in English. This neighborhood is fulfills all environmental area requirements. It's located at 3 kilometers from the historical center of Rome. It covers approximately 1.2 square kilometers, and it's characterized by a fine urban drain that allows to walk and pass one part to another in a brief time. It's characterized by a railway station in the center of the neighborhood, and the theoretical 10 minutes walking represent a radius that constitutes a circle that includes the whole neighborhood. Collecting data has been obtained by participatory process of citizens. As you can see in this slide, you can see the several structural parameters directly collected, but also the structural parameters, for example, the leaf area index on the left and total leaf area on the right, which are useful to calculate the PM10 removal based on downward fluxes absorbed by canopy, green canopies, and in dry deposition velocity that is calculated in relation to the leaf area index and maximum leaf area index ratio. It's important because the canopy is presented as a sink of the particular matter absorption. Results. We can provide a different deposition velocity of the PM following two approaches. Escopero Novak, the first, and Young, the second. The first consider the deposition velocity having the sum dynamics of the leaf area index dynamic in blue, and in graph A and B. And Young's suggestions consider the deposition velocity as constant on the left. And on right, we consider, we can see the trend, dynamics of fluxes through a canopy on the particular matter for deciduous and evergreen. The fluxes are considered constant rates for deciduous and for evergreen. But the PM10 removed by deciduous straight trees was 4 or 8 grams per meters. That's similar to Los Angeles studies of Novak. Under the 50% and 4% of the suspensions rate in A come back in A. But if we consider the Young assumption that consider the deposition velocity constant, we obtain a total removed by T7 or 14 grams per square meters. Comparable results were obtained also for evergreen. And if we consider the total area covered by deciduous fruit trees, yes, they remove 4.3 and 8.3 tons particular matter per year, and over 7 and 14 tons behind the years if we consider the 50% or 4% of its expansions. Take into consideration the emission of PM10 during the year, that is estimated by 28.6 tons per year. The deciduous at evergreen of the Monteverde neighborhood removed 16.22 tons per year. That represents the 56.6% of total PM10 emissions. In conclusion, these results are encouraging for us because develop an effective green infrastructure strategy for minimizing this impact of particular matter. We take into consideration also that this study is a static study, that is don't consider the dynamics of fluxes in pollutants neither in the space and time, but we don't consider also the transformation of the pollutants in one form and another forms by interaction with other pollution. This is a very important challenge for us because tentatively in my lab we are studying the 3D dynamics of the pollutants, taking into consideration also the structural object that is our buildings, open space, and so on, ventilation. That is very important for us because it increases our ability to foresee the fate of the atmospheric pollutants. Finally, the neighborhood sky can provide a suitable spatial dimension to promote some activities focused on traffic calming or reducing speed and number of cars and improving walking and cycling accessibility. The green coverage of plants growing in the neighborhood can interact actively and passively to reduction of the pollutants, but the neighborhood scales allow us to well planning the position of green infrastructure, because in some cases we have a highway with very small trees or narrow streets with very big trees. So in both cases, the ability to capture the pollutants is limited. So I finished my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.